Welcome everyone to the Living Shorelines webinar series. Today we'll be focusing on the Green Shores for Homes program. We are so pleased to have you join us. My name is Jennifer Holmes and I am the Coastal Training Program Coordinator for the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve. We're one of 29 reserves around the United States focused on research, education, and stewardship of our estuaries. First, I want to go over some housekeeping items. If you have issues with audio or video, please use the adjustments under the audio and video tab at the top of your screen, or you can also use them at the bottom of your screen, the icons that are located there. To easily mute and unmute yourself, you can do so by clicking the microphone icon. And to stop your video camera or start your video camera, you can also click that on the video camera icon down at the bottom of the page. We recommend muting yourself and turning your video off to reduce distraction and to save your bandwidth. If you're having technical difficulties today, please send a private chat message to Erin Dorset, that's E-R-I-N. The chat box can be accessed by clicking on the thought bubble labeled chat at the bottom right hand of your screen. We also encourage you to use the chat box today for any questions for the presenters during the presentation. We will be monitoring the chat box and posing those questions to the presenters during the Q&A session at the end. Again, this webinar is being recorded and the chat box is being captured. This webinar is being brought to you by the Delaware Living Shorelines Committee and the Coastal Training Program. And now I'm going to turn it over to Allison Rogerson to give a brief overview of the Living Shorelines Committee. Allison?
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, welcome everybody to the webinar today. My name is Allison Rogerson. I am co-chair for the Delaware Living Shorelines Committee and environmental scientist with the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. We welcome you today to the next session of our Living Shoreline webinar. We're very excited today to welcome some hosts from out on the West Coast, DG and Nicole, and I'm very excited to hear about their program with Green Shores for Homes. This particular topic is of interest to us because it's exploring an incentive program for encouraging living shorelines and best management practices for shorelines, which is something that our Living Shoreline program is very interested in. Our Living Shoreline Committee here in Delaware is comprised of a number of participants, all voluntary, on the state level, federal level, academics, private consultants, and even nonprofits and some estuary programs. So we love all the different components and all the participants that we have. And we focus mostly on researching different types of living shoreline techniques, promoting the appropriate use of living shorelines, and providing new resources and tools to help practitioners deploy living shorelines that are sustainable. So again, welcome and thank you to our presenters today.
Thank you so much, Allison. Here is a little bit of an overview or a brief agenda for today's webinar. If we have time at the end, we will be engaging in a discussion, some breakout groups. Now, I want to thank our presenters today and their organization being with us today. We greatly appreciate your time and willingness to share your expertise with us. As we are transitioning screens and presenters, I'm going to be doing just introduce our speakers with their bios. So I'm going to hand the screen over now to Nicole Fagan. It is my pleasure to introduce Nicole and DG Blair. Nicole Fagan is a coastal management specialist at Washington Sea Grant based at the University of Washington. Nicole has worked for over 30 years as a trained land use and environmental planner and lawyer specializing in waterfront planning issues. At Sea Grant, Nicole focuses on alternative shoreline development to address sea level rise and habitat impacts and manages the Green Shores for Homes project, a grant-funded effort to create a shoreline rating and habitat impact, a shoreline rating program. Nicole is a member of the National Sea Grant Legal Network, the National Working Waterfront Network, and an active member of Washington American Planning Association, where she leads a climate adaptation effort. Nicole received her master's degree in urban planning from MIT and her law degree from Northeastern University University School of Law in Boston, Massachusetts. Our second panelist today is DG Blair. As the Executive Director of the Stewardship Center for British Columbia, DG provides leadership and project management for delivery of stewardship projects and resources to audience throughout British Columbia and across Canada. With deep experience in science-based best management practices for land and water, DG has been instrumental in the development of application and proliferation of the Green Shores program, an incentive-based credit and rating system for minimizing the impact of new shoreline developments, as well as restoring the shoreline ecosystem function of previously developed sites. She has co-authored numerous publications on Green Shores, is a member of the Natural Resources Canada's National Coastal Management Working Group, manages the Green Shores Local Government Working Group, and provides overall project management for the Green Shores in Canada program, coast to coast. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Nicole for her presentation. Nicole?
Thank you. And so my big question is, so how do we go from this kind of an image to this? So my name is Nicole Fagan, as I've been introduced, and I'm a coastal management specialist in Seattle, Washington with Washington Sea Grant, where I help coastal management specialists, coastal management planners to address critical shoreline management issues. So today I'd like to thank both Jennifer and Aaron and Allison for inviting us to join you all to talk about our project here. Today we're going to introduce you to our Green Shores for Homes program, which is a non-regulatory approach to encourage living shorelines. And later you're going to hear from my colleague DG Blair from the Stewardship Center from BC. First, we're going to start off, and I'm going to talk about background and the structure of Green Shores for Homes. And then DG is going to turn to giving examples of how does this apply, and also the training and incentive elements of the program, which makes this very robust way to get at these issues. So first, a little background. We have over 33% of our shoreline in this region armored, and between Washington and Canada. And of that, 75% is single family homes, and they're protecting their homes from erosion by putting up these walls. So research has clearly shown us that these walls are negatively impacting the shoreline and habitat. And they're not necessarily going to provide the best protection in the future as we're having more storms and higher sea levels. So first of all, how do we get to this point? Well, first of all, we love building our houses way too close to the shoreline, right up against that bluff, right against the edge, so to speak. And then, because we're doing that, there are consequences. So we could try to use regulations, and we have lots of those. For example, in Washington, a range of jurisdictions. It's a stick approach, and there's a lot of overlap, different types of reporting, a range of issues that need to be evaluated, all the mitigation requirements. So we decided to develop a different approach called Green Shores for Homes. So I am going to tell you a tale of the Salish Sea. Back in 2010, there was a group of people in British Columbia, and they were involved in housing, mixed use development, and they were involved in what's called LEED. For those of you who don't know, LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and it has been the way to encourage buildings to design more efficiently and effectively to really reduce their energy consumption. So It just so happened somebody who was a biologist had a wife working on a project like that, and he was watching her and going, gosh, why don't we try something similar for the shorelines? And that led to creation of a program called Green Shores for Coastal Development that was sponsored by the Stewardship Center for BC. Well, a little bit farther south in Seattle and in our region, we were looking at issues of how to start alternatives to regulations. We were finding that that just wasn't getting there. We needed an incentive. And we were really captivated by this idea of green shores, or what I used to call lead over the edge, which is an opportunity then that arose for funding through EPA. And in 2012, we applied for and got a grant. And we worked with 2 jurisdictions, and Washington Sea Grant was the project manager to develop this program called Green Shores for Homes, which also then was designed to have a collaboration over the border with the Stewardship Center of BC. So it was a US-BC collaboration. So the program components include 6 parts. Development of a credit system for the Green Shores for Homes credit and rating system. Identify incentives that encourage the homeowners and the builders to learn about how the credit system works. Engage the homeowners and the builders. Train verifiers who can verify the validity and the points accrued for a Green Shores project. Pilot the program in different ways, both here and in BC, and then develop a model for delivery. What I'm going to do now is give you a little background. I'm going to show you a video for a few minutes that shows how the program works.
Aaron and Mel were the proud new owners of a waterfront property, but it had an eroding bank at the edge of the lawn. They were considering installing a retaining wall to prevent the erosion, but were concerned about reducing their beach access and knew it would be costly. What they really wanted was a more natural shoreline where animals and vegetation could flourish. But they were worried about becoming more vulnerable to erosion and flooding, especially as climate change intensifies. When they mentioned this to their new neighbors, they realized it was a common concern. The neighbors had been looking into the same issues and told them about a similar property which had used a new approach called Green Shores. The owners of that property used to have a retaining wall, but erosion had been accelerating at the bottom of the wall. Rather than paying yet again for more maintenance and upgrades, they had decided to remove it and take a Green Shores design approach. In place of the wall, they added natural sand and gravel to the beach, anchored logs at the top of the beach to stabilize the added material, and built a vegetated buffer zone at the top by planting small native trees and bushes. This design provided ample flood protection during winter storms by reducing the eroding force of waves. It also restored the shoreline's natural water and sediment processes, creating habitat for shoreline plants and animals. And as a bonus, the permitting process with local and senior government went smoothly because the governments looked favorably on the Green Shores approach. Even better, the native shoreline vegetation reduced the need for fertilizers, pesticide, and watering, which improved water quality along the shore. Aaron and Mel were impressed and looked up the Green Shores for Homes program online. Reading more, they saw that this approach could be 30 to 70% less expensive to install than a retaining wall and could address up to 1 meter of sea level rise. Then they realized they could work with their neighbors to share costs and restore even more of the shoreline, and their neighbors were excited about it. So they set up a meeting with a professional who had advanced training in Green Shores. After confirming their site was appropriate for the Green Shores approach, the professional showed them how they could use the Green Shores credit and rating system as a checklist for the design process. She explained that the rating system prioritized the restoration of shoreline processes and habitat so an independent reviewer could count a lot of credits toward a Green Shores Award certificate if they used a soft shore design with natural sand and gravel, as well as native vegetation. She also explained that the homeowners might need approval from multiple levels of government, but that she could help. By the end of the meeting, they had settled on a general design approach, and the price quote confirmed that it would be a cost-effective way to protect their shorelines and enhance their property values. Even better, it would give them the natural shoreline view they really wanted. The meeting helped everyone agree that this was the right approach for them, so they decided to enroll in the Green Shores program and contract the Green Shores professional to make it happen. With the professional coordinating the work and helping them through the government permitting process, their new Green Shore design came together perfectly. Now, a year later, Aaron and Mel have the natural shoreline view they always wanted and feel safe knowing their green shore will protect them from flooding and erosion, even in a changing climate. Are you a shoreline landowner or shoreline design professional? Visit greenshoresforhomes.org to learn more about Green Shores design, credit and rating systems, and professional training.
So there you have it. That's an overview of how the program works. Let me dig a little deeper into it. So let me talk about these 4 credits that we have. So there's, first of all, shoreline credits, and there's 6 different types of credits. The purpose of this credit category is to protect or restore natural physical processes vital to the health of the shoreline. Examples of this are removing armor, bulkheads, putting in natural shoreline, moving back structures, putting in setbacks, etc. The second category is shoreline habitat, and there's 6 different credit categories, credit examples. And the purpose for this one is protecting and restoring and enhancing aquatic and riparian habitats. And so this, you get credits for example, the riparian vegetation, the addition of trees and snags, removing invasive species, limiting overwater structures, and creating more sensitive access design. Then the third category is water quality, and there's 6 credits in this area as well. To eliminate the amount of sediment, chemical, and organic pollutants that are discharged to lakes, marine waters, and from rainwater runoff. And so kinds of things that are encouraged are the reducing of the runoff, the limitations on impervious surfaces, limiting the use of herbicides, and then putting in properly functioning on-site sewage treatment. And then the last category, category 4, is a stewardship category. And this is to encourage general best management practices to help support public values of shorelines. So credits are being given for educating the public, creating conservation easements, working together with your neighbors, and shoreline stewardship participation. So all of these credits were developed by a technical team from both BC and Washington. The team was made up of biologists, coastal engineers, planners, landscape architects, contractors, ecologists, a real broad range, and looked at both freshwater and marine water sites. Here's a couple of examples. So this is, for example, in credit, the first category of credits would be looking at shoreline process credits for bulkhead removal. And this is design examples are given, information is given of how to do it, what you would look for, resources to look to. Here's an example from the second category, which is shoreline habitat credits. And this is encouraging the use of native vegetations. And this is, we include in the guide what is considered native vegetations and then how to place it, and some of the various issues you run into in placement of native vegetation. Habitat, second category, also has a credit for a large woody debris to encourage the placement of large woody debris on the site. How do you do that? Where do you put it, etc.? And then third category, this is an example, water quality credits, and addressing the very important issues of how are you dealing with stormwater and your septic on the site, whereas so many times that's one of the biggest water quality issues that we face is the runoff from stormwater, and then also failing septic systems placed right close to the shoreline edge. And then the fourth category, here's an example of that stewardship credits and the idea of developing joint use docks, for example, so that we're not having so much in the way of overwater structures. So this is what the credit and rating document looks like, and it's developed by this technical committee, and all of this information is available online. This is an example of how one of the credits might work. So here's one for credit 2.4, the category 2, and credit 2.4 addressing woody debris. And it gives you two different design options. And then what you can see is there are points. You get base points and then additional points. So for each of the different categories, you'll have this kind of information, or each of the different credits, I mean. Then there's an actual submittal form that gets filled in, and this is part of the whole process. And a submittal form will look at, first of all, what are the submittal requirements? So that'll be given. There's the basic, and then there'll be the additional, what you can do. Then how many credits are you able, what credits are available, and for each of the different types of options within that credit. And then you actually put in how many points you've applied for. And then this is the information that then gets verified by somebody neutral coming in and saying, yes, no, we agree with how many credits you've applied for. So there's two rating levels based on how many credits you actually get in the end. When it's been verified, there's the Chinook, which is 20 to 39 points, or the Green Shores 2, which is the Orca level, which is 40 or more points. All of the information now is easily accessible online. You can look up the credits, you can download the whole document, you can look up what all the information, you can even get the video that I played you. It's all found on the website here, and this gives you it at www.greenshoresforhomes.org. So with that, that's the basic overview of the background and all the sort of the technical of how it works. And the next piece that we're going to do is give you examples of actually how it works and what does it look like with real examples. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to DG.
Great, thanks very much, Nicole. And I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, great, thanks. So I'll just be talking a little bit more about the on-the-ground delivery. Okay, I'm getting some feedback here.
If everybody could make sure that they're on mute, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let's try that again. Okay, that sounds much better. Thanks very much, Jennifer. So we'll be talking a little bit, I'll be going over what it looks like delivering green shores on the ground in British Columbia. And as Nicole mentioned, we've got the Green Shores for Homes credit and rating systems, and as well in BC, we have another credit and rating system for larger scale projects, which we call Green Shores for Shoreline Development. We also have additional aspects to Green Shores, which is really helpful because we found that just having the credit and rating system was not sufficient to really enable the credit and rating systems use on the ground. So we established the Green Shores for Local Government Working Group, which really makes a really strong connection between the credit and rating system and on-the-ground delivery at the local level. So we find local governments, municipalities, et cetera, are really great change agents. We've established training as well as registration for professionals who have trained in Green Shores. And then finally, as last but not least, as Nicole said, the certification, the process to verify that a project has actually met the Green Shores design standard. So moving on, we'll take a look at some project examples. So in this example, really what the property owner wanted to do was to, they didn't have an erosion problem. They really wanted to enhance the riparian and the foreshore. So they really liked minimal intervention, and they had a small cabin located fairly close to the natural boundary. So they moved that cabin back slightly and raised it in anticipation of sea level rise, and really spent their time filling in riparian vegetation and making sure that the large woody debris were improved, so that they had a more robust way to have on those various storms that did come in, that they could have that vegetation assist with the wave attenuation. So I guess people always ask me, do you have to remove a seawall? Do you have to do major structures to be Green Shores eligible? And the short answer is no. So they basically made a broader riparian buffer and dealt with some issues like the septic system, et cetera, in the behind the building, and they achieved a Green Shores ORCA level certification. This next example is an example with and I'm not sure, but it looks to me that we definitely have an eroding shoreline. Looks like they probably had some fill in there previously, and they were very concerned, these property owners were very concerned that concerned with erosion, and especially with sea level rise. So what they, on another point here is that the property is within a wildlife management area, and so they had to take that into consideration. So basically what they did here was they used what was called a hybrid approach, where they did a buried revetment and then planted over that. So this is what it looks like, relatively newly planted. So this project would get credits in terms of using the soft shore approach. They got riparian vegetation credits, as well as some shore stewardship, because they were willing to have their project as a case study. The third example is a lake example, and as Nicole mentioned earlier, that Green Shores is applicable to lake environments as well as shoreline environments. And here you can see that there was 100% of the shoreline was armored, and they were able to remove a large portion of that armor. They did have to tie in. You can see that there is some armoring. They took out the concrete and they put in more natural there, and to tie into the armoring on the other side. But they did added woody debris, added material to make that little pocket beach. They added riparian vegetation, and should be noted that they had a significant move from non-native species to native species in this example. This project also has received a design award in addition to the Green Shores. So those are just 3 examples. And you might ask, well, why do a Green Shores rating? And I think a lot of it has to do with, especially for early adopters, walking the talk. So we have the example on the left-hand side. That's the first project I showed you. And the gal in the middle is a planner at a local government that is promoting the use of these nature-based approaches to shoreline development. And so she wanted to be seen as walking the talk. The folks on the right-hand side of your screen, he is an instructor of architecture and sustainable design at a local university, and again, wanting to be seen as walking the talk. I think really looking at being able to engage with various property owners, as well as working at the community level, that rigorous third-party verification process really does offer compelling proof that the project has met environmental goals. The Green Shores, achieving a Green Shores rating is in alignment with increasing numbers of government policies and regulations. And we're looking at advancing the linkage between projects that utilize the design guidance in the Green Shores for Homes credit and ratings guides and incentives in the future. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later in our talk. So how do you do a Green Shores for Homes project? So basically, you've got your proponent, you've got professionals who assist with that, your construction contractors, and then your verifiers. So how do all of this team, this multidisciplinary team, use the grading, the whole process? The first is what we call stage 1, enroll and initiate. So that's when the project, the homeowner decides that they want to do a Green Shores for Homes project, and they would like to apply so they would need to apply to be part of the program. So they contact the Stewardship Center in British Columbia and enroll the project. And then they are given a copy of the Green Shores for Homes guide, if they haven't already downloaded it, as well as a submittal form that Nicole showed you earlier in an Excel format. So that's pretty easy. You decide to walk the talk and do it. The second stage is more takes a bit more time. So basically, you take a look at your project, the scenario that you've got, and then you work with your design team to see about how do you maximize the number of credits that will apply to your particular project. So we've got a credit checklist, and as Nicole said, there's all these different categories, and you're going to try to maximize the number of credits that apply to your project. And this is kind of a neat aspect of Green Shores, because it basically encourages the project team to look at the project from a more holistic, multidisciplinary lens. So we're not just concerned with habitat. We're not just concerned with shore stewardship, for example. We want to have credits from all those areas. So you utilize that framework to basically design a better project. Here we have this project under construction, and this project on the right was actually the first Green Shores for Homes project that was verified in British Columbia when it was done. So then the third stage after the project has been designed and constructed, and during that process, either the homeowner or the contractor collects the documentation. Then the homeowner submits the application or all the material to the Stewardship Center, and then we have a verifier who is then assigned to the project. The verifier then completes the review, and based on that review, then the project would achieve the Green Shores for Homes rating. And a lot of times there's some back and forth. I would say probably most times there's not all the documentation is not submitted all at once. So there's some dialogue, and there's also usually we get the verifier involved, not at the total project completion, so that they can be tweaked. And I'll speak, the design can be a bit tweaked. And I'll speak a little bit more to that again, in terms of incentives, that one of the things we're experimenting with, sort of an early intervention of a verifier in this process. So as you might tell, we are learning as we go in terms of how to best incentivize utilizing this, the credit and rating system. But one of the things that we have noticed is that, moving to the next slide, having trained contractors, various professionals who work with homeowners has really encouraged the use of Green Shores in British Columbia. To the point that on Vancouver Island, which is a large island off the coast of British Columbia, one contractor in particular, I believe, has done seven projects with great results, and he took the training, and it just lit a light bulb, and away he went. So he now mentions Green Shores to all the people who come to him, and he works for the heavy construction company. So it's not intuitive that people would think that he would be promoting Green Shores, but he does. So I'll just speak briefly to the 3 levels of training that we offer right now. So level 1, we call an introduction to Green Shores. It's really meant to just introduce the concept and of how do you do the credit and rating systems and the ways that Green Shores can be used. And it is really, we deliver a lot of our pre-COVID, a lot of community-based level 1 workshops, so that property owners can attend the workshop, as well as various professionals or contractors. And so you get that networking happening at the local level. Level 2, we call the application of Green Shores. It's really meant for people who work on various shoreline projects or keeners, as well as government. And then finally, we're just in the process of finishing up a pilot of what we call level 3, which is proficiency in Green Shores, which will lead to an approved professional designation. And then eventually these folks will be on our website, so that homeowners, project proponents can come to us and say, you know, we need somebody, and we can point them in the direction. One of the points about the training is that we have develop the training in collaboration with post-secondary institutions. And we find that that is really an important aspect because it lends a lot of credibility to our training. And then in terms of the delivery, we work in collaboration with local communities, especially the local government working group, to deliver that training, well, pre-COVID, when we actually went to the community. So it was a regionally based delivery. So University of Victoria and British Columbia Institute of Technology are our partners in BC. And I will note that the level 1 through BCIT can be taken as an online version as well. And we're just in the process of expanding our training with delivery partners on the east coast of Canada and the Atlantic in Nova Scotia and University of PEI. So just finally a note on training. This local networking is really an important aspect because when we are able to do the local delivery, we bring the various partners together and you start developing those relationships between the local government, professionals who work with them, and oftentimes the property owners who are needing to have this work. And so we have them all work together in using the design, the credit and rating guide as helping to do design, and that's really been important. Needless to say, with the COVID situation, we've had to pivot. And so we have been delivering courses online or in a webinar type scenario delivered at the local level, and that seems to be working pretty well. And then, as I previously mentioned, the Proof Professionals is coming soon. So hopefully we'll have that level 3 up and running in January. And it is also an online course. And then we'll just touch base on the local government working group. So we've got the opportunity to have monthly peer-to-peer learning opportunities through Zoom these days, or previously it was on a teleconference. We try to lend support to local governments to help them with their education and outreach and access to additional resources. So sometimes we have a Green Shores for Homes incentive projects where 2 of our pilot communities are in the local government working group. And we find that sometimes here in BC, that folks on local governments, they feel like they're doing this on their own. And this is a way to bring the group together, add support through resources, funding, and delivery of this training locally. So we're going to be talking, and Nicole, I'm hoping that you'll be able to jump in here in a couple of slides in terms of the talking about the incentives.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. So Nicole had these great signs printed up a while ago, and so the idea is that homeowners can put the sign, and I have to say that they're usually really delighted to have these signs. You know, you can see the smiles on the faces, and they proudly put them up there. What we don't know is how well they last, but they're made of metal, and so that's sort of a feel-good kind of thing. And I just going to touch briefly on the other thing that we are doing is this coastal studies. Because a number of these properties are or a lot of the properties are very small, because they're residential single-family homes. In order to really understand and design the best project, it's really a good idea to have, well, you must have a good study and understanding of what the processes are on that particular site. So what we decided to do was to get some funding to do what we called a neighborhood or beach scale coastal design basis. So an understanding of what's going on in terms of design, water levels, return period, offshore waves, and the sea state condition at the site. And then have a coastal engineering firm do some conceptual designs for soft shore, green shores approaches that span multiple properties. So, so we have this study currently underway, and we picked 2 pilot areas that you can see, Gartley Beach on the right, and then Seacroft on the left. And these are in 2 of our working group communities. And in addition to this, we are, once we have these coastal studies available to the property owners and these conceptual designs, then we have a Green Shores for Homes coordinator visit the property owners in these target neighborhoods to engage with them to see whether sort of to encourage and support adoption of the Green Shores for Homes type project. And so we also offer as another incentive free Green Shores for Homes enrollment and project verification. So these incentives that we're trying out are offering these access to this neighborhood scale coastal study and design concepts. The the Green Shores for Homes projects coordinator visiting the site and doing basically early engagement before project enrollment, and then also offering this free enrollment and verification. The other thing we, Nicole and I wanted to talk about was this whole permitting issue. One of the things that we've heard from property owners is that expedited permitting is a really big incentive as compared to, let's say, reduced fees, et cetera. So what we are encouraging in terms of this at the local government level, that we do have expedited permitting process in some of our local governments. And what we've noted is that we've got increasing numbers of, in British Columbia, the coastal local governments have strong alignment with principles, and 9% actually directly reference Green Shores as what they would like to see in terms of shoreline development. And I'll just let Nicole jump in on at the state level in Washington.
Yeah, we've been working on this. We've taken a bit of a different turn and direction in Washington State, so that we've got this broader program in the marine environment called Shore Friendly. And that's working with a variety of jurisdictions. Some of them have been looking at ways to use permitting as an incentive. It's not in the Green Shores model, but it's very similar. But similarly, hearing that is a huge issue that the homeowners and the contractors want, and it's a way to get them into the program.
Yeah, great. And then one of the things we have in BC, and actually this is true right across Canada, is that there is not great alignment or synergy between the various levels of government, the local, provincial, and federal. There's like this morass of of regulations, and it's really difficult for a property owner or manager to do the right thing. Like the question is, why do we make it so hard to do the right thing? And so one of the things that the Stewardship Center has been working on particularly at the local level and the provincial level, is to have better alignment and synergy so that it's easier to do the right thing. And it's a slow process. I was looking back on my notes with the provincial government, and we've been hard at it for 2 solid years in this working group meeting monthly. And we are making progress, but we'll see where we've got. And so at the provincial level in BC, we're now working on a pilot 3-tiered approach to incentivize nature-based projects that are consistent with Green Shores for Homes. And in there, basically, it's really easy to, if you have a project that meets the Green Shores for Homes design guidance in terms of your app to be able to move forward with your project, you have to pay a little, and there's no cost for permits. For the second tier, you have some cost for permits. It's still relatively easy to get your permit through. And the third tier is for hard armor. You've got to pay more, and you've got to wait a long time to get your application processed. So they're sort of trying this money, or this is the idea with the pilot, the money as well as expedited. So, and I'll let Nicole jump in for Washington.
And we have something similar going on of the 3 tiers, 3 levels of government. We have local, state, federal government, and we have a work group that's been similarly working for the last 2 years, 2.5 years on this idea of an alignment of permitting. But again, recognizing that one of the big stumbling blocks has been that each of the different levels of permitting have different requirements, and that they're not necessarily in agreement, and there's different terminology and definitions. So they've been working hard on trying to come up with something that actually recognizes the whole concept of soft shore and encourages and encourages that implementation.
Yeah, great. And then Nicole, why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, so in Washington, like I said, we've got ours is a little bit different, where we have this shore-friendly program that's been going on. But one of the things I just wanted to talk about is that money is an incentive. And so this idea of small grants, we have a small grant program that the funding for some of our what are called shore-friendly programs that provide technical assistance to homeowners and encouraging them to go through the process of doing something with their property. Also, some of them have these small grants of $5,000, which is just like, we're going to give you a little bit of money to get you up and going, to encourage you to get into the process and to start doing some of the work. The other program is that we're just working on is the revolving loan fund. And there's a couple of examples of this around the United States, which once it's capitalized, it really can work for itself, where people can apply for loans for design construction. Once they pay it back into the loan fund plus interest, it's enough to keep the loan fund going. One of the things though that they're looking at with respect to this revolving loan fund is order to apply for it and to receive the loans is to use Green Shores for Homes categories, credits, and ratings as a way to determine whether or not a property would qualify for a loan.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Nicole. And I think we're into Q&A here, and I'm just going to go straight to our slide with our contact information, just in case folks would like to get that. And Jennifer, if you can tell me, should I stop sharing now, or?
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah, we'll go ahead and stop sharing. And Allison, if you would, Allison's going to be kind of facilitating our Q&A session. If you have any questions today for our panelists, please feel free to put those in the chat box. We will be going into some breakout rooms to discuss how the credits work a little bit more and to give you some experience with that. So while I'm putting together the breakout rooms. Allison will be handling the Q&A session. Again, feel free to use the chat.
Can I just quickly jump in with an answer to, there was one that came in while DG was talking, which is about wanting to implement this into your regulation. And DG kind of addressed that and talked about that. And I just wanted to also talk about an example where using the framework, well, two things. One is using the framework, you can pick and choose what to put it into a regulatory system. So we had the National Marine Fisheries Service that had dock permits that they wanted to address some issues, and they used parts of the Green Shores for Homes credit and rating in there, and it was a basis for them to put something in there. But the one thing that I wanted to comment on is the whole concept of LEED, the whole concept of Green Shores, it's separate from government. And sometimes there's a real advantage of doing something that is non-regulatory. So for example, what DG has, and which has been working so well, has been the Stewardship Center is not a government entity. So she can come in with her program and implement this and verify, and then the local government says, oh, okay, this is a separate neutral evaluation that we're going to be able to take and implement in, and we're going to then look at for the purpose of permitting, but it's neutral from us, because if anybody on the call has been part of that, being the government, you're in this little bit of a quagmire, if you will, where you want to evaluate something, but you can't give it your evaluation because you're not seen as being neutral. You're one-sided, you're the government, and then you're going to run into problems against the contractor. And so the real beauty of these kinds of programs is their neutrality. The question then is, who's the host? And to be honest, that's one of the problems I ran into in Washington is, unlike the Stewardship Center, Sea Grant wasn't set up to be a host in the same way. And so we couldn't get it up and running and get people to be part of that when I was competing with some other programs, whereas DG's program really stands alone as compared to any governmental programs.
That's great. Yes, and that's actually been the question that I've been asking myself. You know, I'm with the state government, and so I say this is an amazing opportunity. This is something that I think we could use in Delaware, but how could we actually execute something of this magnitude? And I think, you know, just what you were saying, we need a third-party conservation group, and whether that is one of our national estuary programs or another program, but something like that would probably help facilitate that.
Right.
So I want to start out there.
I'll just jump
ahead,
in just quickly because we are actually in the process of scaling out from British Columbia to partners in Nova Scotia. And that exactly was the biggest question is, okay, who would be our partner in Nova Scotia? And so we did engage with, did some research on this, and there is a paper up on our website, and it's called Green Shores 2020, an evaluation of, anyways, et cetera, and it's a triple bottom line evaluation, and part of it is looking at how do you scale it out. And what we did, and it gives some fairly high level steps in terms of identifying the organization and how to move forward. So we've actually begun that process. And so I think we're going to learn a lot between looking at how do we build capacity in Nova Scotia, that organizational capacity, so that they will be able to deliver Green Shores in Nova Scotia, and obviously still maintaining a connection to the Stewardship Center. But I think the long and short of it is there's some research available that you can take a look at. And also that is something that I think we've noted that we're interested in doing, is scaling out in different locations.
Great. I'll be sure to check out that paper and maybe share it with our Delaware Living Shoreline community as we talk about this topic in the future.
There was a segue question also, Allison. Can I jump in on that one, which was, this is Green Shores for homes, but somebody was saying, well, what about condominiums? So, so DG is going to be able to talk about that because Green Shores for Homes was developed in Washington because we felt like that was our biggest problem. But in BC, they really started with that commercial. It was talking about ports and parks and condominiums, and the homes was second, came after that. Whereas here in Washington, we had enough going on that we didn't feel like that was our critical path. So DG, do you want to just explain the Green Shores for Shoreline development?
Yeah, sure. So we have two credit and rating systems. If you remember that puzzle piece I showed at the very beginning of my slide. So there's two credit and rating systems. One, Green Shores for Homes, for single family homes. And the other one is called Green Shores for Shoreline Development. And it specifically looks at larger projects such as mixed use commercial, multifamily residential, parks, et cetera. So that system is basically based on the same principles. The credits are described differently, but basically same process, different credit rating system. So yes, we've got that available as well.
And it's online. So for the person who asked that question, I really suggest you go on to the website and take a look because there's so much resources that have gone into this and thought about how do you address a site from all these aspects. And that's the beauty of this is it's not just saying, how do you remove a bulkhead? It's looking at the whole site.
And I love that you have the different programs that are parallel to each other that are specific for single family homes or for larger. And if you know anything about development, especially in southern Delaware, in our Sussex County, lots of coastal development. And so a program like that would be very appropriate. There was one question I wanted to just repeat that happened during the presentation about the cost that it might take to implement such a rating system. And Nicole, your response was just that to develop a program like this would depend, of course, on the framework that could be used as the basis for developing a local program, and then it would depend upon how you get it implemented. And you said you were willing to talk to them.
Yeah, and just to add to that was the idea of taking and working with, for example, what DG's doing with Nova Scotia is you start with what's already been put together and then you modify it for all of these pieces and look at what you need to do for your area and what your shoreline situation, because obviously Delaware and what your impacts are, what your coastal hazards are, very different from what we're dealing with in the Salish Sea here.
Yeah, and I think our main point that Nicole and I have been working with is there's no point in reinventing the wheel. Let's just adapt and move forward from where we are now. Right.
Great. Well, Jen, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat box. Are you ready to split up into
Yes, we are.
Great.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Great questions out there, and hopefully this is useful information for you. We're going to go into a little bit more of an engaging session where we can have a discussion more about some of an example scenario, and so you can see a little bit more about the credits. So I'm going to start the breakout sessions. You're going to have approximately a little over 10 minutes to have this discussion. I am going to go ahead and start the breakout session. You may or may not have to accept it, but just to let you know, you will automatically be assigned to a breakout session. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Hello, everyone. You should be on your way back. We have a few folks coming in. Thank you so much. I hope that you had a very vibrant discussion. I heard one or two robust discussions there. We do have a few minutes here before we need to move on. I didn't know if anybody any of our facilitators had anything that they wanted to share from the breakout session, very briefly.
DG here. I'll just jump in. So Scott and I had a great chat looking at that particular property, and it was great to see looking at the structure there. I'd say, you know, we started up from the education point of view, like in terms of education and collaboration. So getting the neighbors involved and noted that those various categories really highlighted those shore stewardship credits. So not just starting at the design stage, but starting at how do we look at chatting with our neighbors and getting a broader application of that. So that was a really great way to start the discussion.
Wonderful. And that being said, Scott, did you have that conversation around the question that you put in the chat box, or just let us know? I know that he had put in something here that said, not so much a question, but a statement born in frustration. I'm living in Sussex County, Delaware. My impression is that there is not a lot of sensitivity around green spaces and living shorelines. Condominium and new home communities are going up all around us as farmland gets sold, and there seems to be little regard for environmental protection. I live in a community that went up in 2006, and there are condos. Sorry, I just, let's see, just skipped ahead too much on that, on my scrolling there. And there are condos whose backyards go right up within 10 feet of a wetland or a creek bank. It makes communities and homeowners, whether individually or as a group, that wish to take the first steps to restoring using green shore principles, the shorelines and the environment that have been insensitively sidelined by builder growth and fait accompli development, very, very difficult. Any tips on how to start when up against this type of climate? Were you able to have that discussion, or did you need that answered now too? Oh, I see that. So thank you, Scott. No, it has not been addressed. Anybody want to address that thought? It's also in the chat box if you need to refer back to it.
I will just say that in Sussex County in particular, the Center for the Inland Bays has been working on a county level very actively, right now, currently, to improve setbacks and protect coastal wetlands and provide riparian buffer habitat and better protection on a county level, because that is an ongoing issue. And we hear a lot of complaints, and we agree too. We're looking at it from a water quality standpoint, from a wetland habitat standpoint, with some sustainable into the future of sea level rise, all kinds of different scenarios. And so we agree with you, and we're on the same mindset. And there are some efforts to make improvements in the county.
I was just going to comment on what we've done in terms of education, because I think you've done a fair amount of that in Delaware, but also more of that. And we have in Washington a pretty robust homeowner education. We have it localized, and these homeowner workshops, something like what DG does, but just really focused just on the homeowners. And then they get invited. I mean, very targeted homeowner workshops. And the incentive is, come to our workshop. We're going to give you all this information. We're going to educate you, which is usually number one, is getting people educated. And then we're going to offer free technical assistance, somebody coming out to your property to look at it and talk with you about your site. So that's a real good, easy entryway, is to start in with those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that, and that's the model that we've been employing in British Columbia, is to start with the education, and then to bring the various players together so that you have homeowners chatting with the local coastal engineer and the biologist, as well as the local government representatives. So you've got these various players, and you develop that network, and you start having these conversations, and you have the opportunity to educate a lot of misconceptions that particularly homeowners have about the various opportunities, the various options. and also the cost for those options. I mean, quite honestly, a lot of homeowners in particular are really they do not understand, or previously, to the workshop didn't understand that actually putting in a rock wall or doing this overdevelopment is a bad thing. I can still remember one fellow on this little island that we were at, and he honestly, he looked at me and he said, "Do you mean to tell me that putting in a concrete wall is a bad thing?" Like he was very sincere. He had no idea, and then so he came away, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different scenario than I thought there would be. So I think education is so important, and I know in BC, and the model we use here is this networking idea at the local level. So you bring the players together, you use the Green Shores for Homes framework, all those credit categories to work together and cross-pollinate ideas, and it really seems to be effective, because we all know relationships are important to move things forward. We have to nurture those positive relationships, and you're not going to get everybody for sure, but that seems to be helpful in terms of first steps.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that. There was also a follow-up comment that says the challenge in Sussex County, as in other places, is the juxtaposition of ecosystem benefits from efforts that must be taken at the individual property level. In Sussex County, private rights to develop lands to a highest and best use have historically hindered what might make sense ecologically. So thank you so much for that follow-up as well. Any other last thoughts from our breakout groups before we conclude our webinar for today?
Did anybody talk through what credits they actually got? DG, did you tell your group?
We talked about credits. Oh, no, what they actually got? No, we didn't get that far.
Oh. So are people interested in what credits were actually earned?
We didn't get that far either.
So they earned credits. The way this property got their credits was credit 1.2, which is for setback and avoidance, credit 1.5 for using soft shore protection, 2.1 for increasing their riparian vegetation, 2.2 for addressing trees and snags, and you notice there was a tree on site and keeping it. 2.4 is in the design, they added woody material. 2.6 is they minimized their access to the beach, so access design credit. And then 4.1 and 4.2, they use shoreline collaboration and public information in their project. So that just gives you an idea. You don't necessarily get all credits for all projects. That gives you an idea how you get some for one project and something different for another. And you really have to look at what each of the credits are offering to get an understanding of how they apply and then what is relevant for that particular property.
Yeah, and the Green Shores training really helps dig into the meat of the specific credits, and so that's why we really encourage people to take the training. And as I mentioned, the introduction to Green Shores is available online. If you go to the website and look under training, you can get a link to the online training, and it's self-paced. Just start when you're ready, and it's a lot of fun. It's very clever. As much as I love in-person training, I think they did a really good job of a very clever and engaging introduction for an online course.
Minimum qualifications for each credit. The minimum, yes, there's a baseline. I mean, you have to complete something. It's not like you can just move a little dirt and say that's good. There's certain bases, and it's all really well described. I mean, there are actions you have to take, and the credit and rating guide really tells you how to get to that.
I want to thank you both for such a great presentation and engaging folks today in that breakout discussion. And thank you to Allison and Aaron for also facilitating and helping out with the kind of behind the scenes work. We really appreciate this presentation, and it gives us a lot to think about here on the East Coast. So we greatly appreciate you taking the time today. And just to give you a heads up, we do have another Shoreline webinar coming up in February, the ecological and economic benefits of living shorelines. That's going to be February the 16th, and our presenter is going to be Dr. Marianne Walsh from the Center for the Inland Bays. So we're grateful to her for agreeing to also be part of this webinar series, as well as to DG and Nicole for providing such a great presentation today. We would love to hear from you all. So if you could give us some feedback on the survey, I just put it in the chat box. We'd love to hear more about also your needs as we move forward with different topics for these Living Shoreline webinars. Again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you in the future. Have a great holiday and take care.
Thank you.